All right.
Hello and welcome to the June 2014 edition of Access TV, where I cheerfully promote my friends and community. I'm Molly Caron. Well, the sun is out, it's festival season, and there is plenty to keep us busy and in the present. But what is our obligation to remain mindful of the past? How do we find a better way to live together and learn to be better citizens? Well, the work continues. And here at Access TV, we're going to roll up our sleeves and get into the details. This episode, we're going to speak with Sid Tan and get his reaction to the BC government's apology for the Chinese head tax and exclusionary legislation. We'll also speak with Gunargie O'Sullivan, who's here with filmmaker Tammy Lynne. They're going to discuss the rate of child apprehension and how it's increasing, as well as Tammy Lynne's film project, Eagle Feather. We'll hear from Wendy Pedersen. She's going to give us an update on the Downtown Eastside United group that's growing stronger by the day. And there's an art show coming up, the Carnegie Community Centre, featuring Haisla Collins' work. We'll get the details on that. We bring you an original music composition to commemorate the anniversary of the Komagata Maru. This music will be featured at this year's Indian Summer Festival. And Imtiaz Popat will get the lineup from the director of that festival, Sirish Rao. And we'll hear a bit of that music from Neelamjit Dhillon. As well, we'll get the latest from Judy Kenzie, who's going to teach us about succession seeding on the urban Grange. And we're returning to our segment, Unsung Heroes, in which Robbe Hardnette will profile the legacy of Mick Sahota and speak with his brother George and sister Vickey Sahota. And finally, Wendy Pedersen is going to sit down with Tristan Markle, and we're going to learn more about COPE's new proposal for a housing authority. On May 15th, 2014, Premier Christy Clark, on behalf of the British Columbia government, apologized for historic wrongs against Chinese Canadians. The apology recognizes 160 historical, racist, discriminatory policies imposed in BC, such as the Chinese head tax, denying Chinese immigrants the right to vote, and exclusionary legislation. Joining me is Sid Tan, a founder and current director of Head Tax Family Society here in BC, and also a longtime redress activist for the Chinese head tax and exclusion legislation. Welcome, Sid. By long time, we mean 30 years?
30 years. It's a pleasure to be here.
Still.
Still.
And full disclosure, you are the executive producer of Access Television and a regular contributor. Your family was directly affected by the legislation. And I want to start with your grandfather. Tell us how your grandfather came to Canada.
Grandfather borrowed or got money from the family to come to Canada in 1919. He paid the $500 head tax. He worked hard. He said it took him 6-7 years to pay it back, and when he paid it back, it was time to get married. He got married in 1926 and could not bring my grandmother over to Canada until 1950 because the exclusion legislation didn't end until 1947.
Now, you, on behalf of the Head Tax Family Society, have rejected the apology. Why?
The apology, to put it in context, came out just before the election last year as quick wins. And that has been the ethos that the government has put on it because when they were found out, the memo, the leaked memo, and it's gone. What the British Columbia government has done has taken an issue of justice and honor for pioneer Chinese families and turned it into vote pandering and photo ops. I mean, really, to me, an apology, you know, to be meaningful, of course, it should acknowledge the wrongdoing. The government has done that. It should be redemptive. The government has tried to do something with that. But I think most importantly, it should offer healing. especially to the affected surviving elderly sons and daughters that are still alive that suffered the exclusion legislation. So there should be a component of healing, and that healing should actually come also with a full measure of restorative justice. And when I say restorative justice, I'm saying that the message from this apology by the BC government is that, yes, we're sorry we had a racist head tax, and we have proceeds from it. Our treasury's been enriched by $9 million. We're keeping the money. This shows that you can profit from racism in British Columbia. That is the message from this apology, and I think that's wrong.
Immigration is still a big cash cow for the Canadian government, and it continues to be. But when we look back at the past, they did apologize, the Conservative federal government, and they did give $20,000 to the survivors. Can you explain to us how that's just a drop in the bucket?
Yeah. Well, that was a good start, true. There were 82,000 plus head taxes paid. What the Conservative government of Stephen Harper did was apologize and gave $20,000 ex gratia payments to surviving head taxpayers alive at the time, 2005, and also surviving spouses of deceased head taxpayers. That was 775 payments. That's less than 1% of all the head tax families. This again is an issue of optics, and it's vote pandering and photo ops. This is an issue of justice and honor for pioneer Chinese families, and particularly for the still surviving affected elderly seniors from exclusion. And they're looking for justice and honor. And there is no justice and honor the way the federal government and the provincial government have used this apology. And I understand that the Vancouver Council is going to do an apology too, and we hope they do it right, because this is all about the survivors of the legislation. And I have in my home 3,000 signed statements from head tax families or head taxpayers and their family asking us to pursue justice and honor, because if you can't get justice,
what have you got?
Chances are there's not going to be any honor. And this is why I think to a great extent, you know, Chinese in Canada are still seen as a relatively new immigrant community, although our family has been in North America since the California Gold Rush of 1849, and my children are the first. Our family is finally native to Canada. My children were born here, but they were born 170 years after our family got here. That tells you what racist legislation does.
Well, Sid Tan, I want to thank you for explaining to me what the head tax apology means to you and why the Head Tax Family Society has rejected it. It's a lot clearer.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. I
have a lot to learn. Don't we all? Thank you for watching Access TV. I'm Molly Caron. I was interested to learn from Sid that exclusion legislation was hatched in BC. Next up, we're going to get an update from Wendy Pedersen and Sid about the Downtown Eastside United General Meeting.
Hello and welcome to Access Community Television, shamelessly promoting our friends and community. My name is Sid Tan and I'm here with Wendy Pedersen. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Sid.
Wendy is an Access volunteer who does a lot of research and interviewing, and we're here to do a report back on a meeting we were at the other day, and I think I'll throw it to Wendy. What was that meeting?
Okay, you and I were at Downtown Eastside United. It was the third general meeting at the Dodson Hall on Hastings Street, and Downtown Eastside United is a new group. It's a new resident group. And boy, there was a lot of people there, and our goal is to basically have more voice for Downtown Eastside residents. And you and I, full disclosure, are two of the instigators of this new project.
Well, I don't know about instigator. Conveners is a nicer name.
Conveners, yes.
So tell us, in terms of the meeting, what I found, what was amazing, was the immense diversity of people there. I mean, not young, old, all across different cultural groups and language groups. And I thought it was really interesting, and you set it up, was we had American Sign Language there.
I know, we had two deaf people from the Downtown Eastside who've never participated in our meetings before be able to communicate. It was so moving. And why? And why are all these people coming out, Sid? Why do you think? Because they want to do something. They're looking for some leadership of what we can do in the Downtown East Side to preserve, you know, the needs and the assets and tenure of low-income people in the area that are getting displaced by this gentrification and condo development. That's what I think. I think people can see what's happening too in the community. They see development rolling in and they know that their days are numbered. And I think that's what's driving people to the meeting. And there was about 100 people there, hey, at the first part, talking about what's an inspiring action that's going to bring the whole community together. And I think we've narrowed it down to the Sequel 138 Pantages condo development near Carnegie, that people symbolically, we did so much work to try to get that to be social housing, and it's going to be a high-end condos, and I think that's where the energy is going to go for the first part of this group's campaign. There was much discussion on structure, all these different things, and we have very little time, Wendy, but I'm just wondering if we can just go through some of the important points that we're developing in a constitution, which is a work in progress. Yeah, it's a work in progress. Over 3 meetings with 100 people at each meeting, we've been talking about this constitution. What's the vision that brings us all together? And so far what we've come up with is stop gentrification and displacement, homes for all, poverty for none, community-directed policing and health services, so important. People want to have more say over those, over the police and over the health and over services. Community control. So decision-making about the Downtown East Side at City Hall shouldn't happen at City Hall. It should happen in the community. And the 5th one that I think gets everybody excited is every voice matters, nobody left behind. And you know who said that? Bud Osborne. So Bud Osborne is a famous Downtown East Side resident. He's our poet laureate. He just passed away. And he was at the original meetings to convene the Downtown Eastside United. He actually gave us the name. Yeah, he did. He said, unity is more important than anything right now. Our community is going to be destroyed. And so that's how the name Downtown Eastside United came. And he also said, every voice matters, nobody left behind. So in that spirit, our structure, one of the key points in our structure is members will make decisions. They are the final and sovereign body of the Downtown Eastside United. It's not going to be a small little clique or a board or a president. It's going to be these large general meetings where we get good at voting together on the key issues that affect us in our community and take action based on that. It was so good to see so many people come out. And one of the things about these meetings, and I encourage people to come and do it, the last meeting was at Dodson Hall, and they may not necessarily be there all the time. I think they will be. Is that right? Yeah, the first Saturday of every month. The first Saturday of every month, Dodson Hall, 3 p.m. Yeah. Okay. We have to go now, Wendy, so thanks. I guess there's not much we can do, right? Okay. And my name is Sid Tan. I'm here with Wendy Pedersen, and we've been talking about the Downtown Eastside United 3rd general meeting that we had. Woo-hoo. All right.
I'm here with Mark Amodio. And what brings you to Vancouver?
Well, I was in Calgary at one time, and I was working at Walmart, but then when I quit there, I had no money. But I knew there was shelters here, so I thought, okay, I'm going to get to Vancouver and apply for my unemployment here.
So Vancouver had a reputation for having shelters?
Yeah, shelters and free food and that, just in case I got hungry while I had no money.
So you came here on a bus?
I came here on a bus.
Is that how you got here?
Yeah, I had one duffel bag with me full of clothes, and that's basically it. But then I didn't get a bed the first night, so I had to sleep out on a bench. But that was really a nice night out, so I didn't mind. Slept out on the bench that night, and the next night I had shelter.
So you came to this building. Tell us about this building.
Well, I came here a little later after I got in a shelter. I put my application in here, but there's like a 3 or 4 or 5 year waiting list.
5-year waiting list? So you were willing to wait that long?
If I had to. They are either $384 or $487. Depends how much money you make.
So your adventures in Vancouver, are they leaving you with a good feeling or a bad feeling overall?
Actually, a good feeling, because there's nowhere else, I don't believe, in Ontario that provides all these facilities like shelters and free food. If you go starving down here, you got an issue. I had one time I had money 5 years ago when I got unemployment at the auto industry. But when you're unemployed for 5 years and you got to pay bills, it takes all your money.
Well, Mark, we're going to take a walk down memory lane and talk about your stay in Vancouver.
Applied for the Grace Mansion. I put my application in there, and they turned it down. While I was applying there, I stayed at the Union Gospel Mission, and you're allowed to stay there 2 weeks, and then you have to leave for a month. But there's other places you're allowed to stay 2 weeks, and you leave for a month. So I just rotated from shelter to shelter until I got a place. I lived at the Grand Union for a month right off the bat, but I knew this wasn't going to work because I didn't want to collect welfare and get in debt to them when my unemployment was pending. So I thought, let's move out of there and pay off those debts, my welfare and my Walmart MasterCard. And I paid those all off. I'm debt-free now.
So your strategy was to live without having to get further into debt?
Yes.
Pay your debt?
Yes.
And to stay with a roof over your head?
Yeah.
And you were successful at doing that?
Yes, I was. Because I don't have a drug problem. I don't have an alcohol problem. I don't smoke. So I never did any of that. So that's why I could pay it off. People who are doing that are always in debt to somebody.
We're across from the Astoria Hotel. What are the rooms like at the Astoria?
I've checked them out. I went in one of the rooms. They're almost like the Grand Union rooms, but they charge $450 a month. Grand Union charges $400, but I think they're just a little bit nicer than the Grand Union, but a little more expensive.
Comes with a double bed.
Yes.
A sink.
Yep. And a dresser. And a dresser.
And a window.
And a window and a bed.
And a door that locks.
Yes. And that's basically it. That's just a room. They had a place for April 1st, but I decided to go with the Grand Union because it's $50 cheaper.
Yeah.
Excuse me, the place is a little messy.
That's all right. So this is, by definition, an SRO.
Yeah.
Okay, you have a window.
The window doesn't get much air because there's no window outside.
Oh.
It's a window that goes up there. That's where the air comes in.
Okay. So do you cook in here?
Hardly ever. I don't use a microwave.
Okay. So you have a sink and a fridge. Do you use the fridge?
Yes.
So we've been visiting the Grand Union.
Yes.
With Mark.
Yes.
And for Access TV, I'm Molly Caron, shamelessly promoting our friends and community. SROs are being lost to rent evictions at an alarming rate and continue to be. And affordable housing has been identified as a top priority, and we'll be hearing a lot more about it as the municipal elections approach in November. Affordable housing is a rarity in Vancouver, especially when the average annual income is $40,000 a year. Now, for another segment of Making Sense of Vancouver's Housing, we have Wendy Pedersen. She's going to sit down with Tristan Markle and discuss COPE's proposal for a new housing authority.
Hello, I'm Wendy Pedersen. I'm with Access TV, shamelessly promoting our friends and community. I have here in the studio today Tristan Markle. He's on the executive of COPE, which is Vancouver's longest standing municipal party, who last held the majority at City Council in the years 2002 to 2005. Welcome, Tristan. Thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So I'm very interested in housing issues and the housing crisis in the city, and I noticed that your political party is advertising a housing authority as part of your platform for the election coming up in November. What is this housing authority?
Well, the main thing that a housing authority will do is build the housing that we need. And what's different from now is that right now, housing is being built by private developers, and those private developers are not building housing that most people can afford, and in particular low-income people, many of the people that we know, and young people. So Housing Authority will step in where the market is failing and build housing that's affordable and build social housing for people who can't afford the private market.
So this Housing Authority is run by the city then?
Yes.
It is the city?
It is run by the city, or it will be an independent organization that is wholly owned and controlled by the City of Vancouver.
Okay, and how many units could it build?
Well, there's two things. I mean, it must build social housing to meet the needs of people who are homeless or can't afford housing right now. So that's probably about 800 units of social housing per year. And if you look back in the 2005 Housing Action Plan that was developed under Cope Council in consultation with many people, that's what they said. They said we need 800 units of social housing per year for 10 years. And that wasn't accomplished, and so it needs to be, and we're far behind.
Okay.
So that's 800 of those types of units, but one of the ways that the Housing Authority will raise revenues and profits to pay for that is by entering into development in the private market and building revenue-generating properties. So those would be additional units that the Housing Authority could build, and I could tell you about how to do that.
So you mean like at a place like Olympic Village, the city wouldn't have turned it over to a developer, the city would have been the developer and made that money and then ensured that the low-income housing was built there. Is that an example?
Yeah, well, another example would be at UBC, at the University of British Columbia. The university owns a development company called UBC Properties Trust, and they've had a couple of projects over the past 10 years or 20 years where they built 1,000 units in a project, and it generated profits of $100 million.
Whoa.
Now the university, in each of those projects, put those profits back into the university for academic purposes. But in the city of Vancouver, that would, those profits would all be directed towards building social housing.
Okay.
So that's a good idea of how much money you can build. Another counterexample is in Surrey. They have a development company that they started 5 years ago called the Surrey City Development Corporation. Now it is generating profits for the city, but they are not being directed towards social housing. They're not being directed towards something that we call like a social mandate. So we don't want to do that. And we'd be worried if the City of Vancouver, under the current developers, they're controlling City Hall, if they started some kind of housing authority that was run by developers and they started using the profits for just putting to general revenues to reduce property taxes or something like that, that would not be acceptable. So any kind of profits must go into social or affordable housing.
Okay, so if this is such a great idea, why isn't Vision Vancouver, the Mayor Robertson, and the NPA and the other political parties taking it up? Like, why wouldn't they do this? Because it sounds good to me.
I think the answer is really simple. Right now, real estate corporations in the real estate industry control the agenda at City Hall, and they do not want the city building social housing for sure, and they do not want the city building market housing either, because that cuts into the profits that the real estate industry will be making. They do not want the city to cut into their profits.
That makes sense. So one of the critiques I've heard out there is why would we do this and let the provincial government and the federal government off the hook? Shouldn't they be the ones that are building affordable housing, especially for people that are very poor? So are we letting them off the hook if we all get behind the Housing Authority?
It's a good question, theoretically, but in practice, if you look at what's happened in the past 10 years, the province has been mostly off the hook. They are not building the housing that we need. They're not funding it. So whatever kind of lobbying or pressure that the cities are putting on the province isn't working. So we believe that a housing authority will be far better to lobby the provincial government and put forward land, resources, say, look, the city's stepping up, whereas the province, why aren't you stepping up? We're building 800 units of social housing, what are you doing? And say the same to Harper. And if you look at other cities around the world, we put out this housing report, that's what they do. So New York City, they lobby Congress better than any other city because they have a housing authority, and they actually use the housing authority tenants are organized and they mobilize to go and fight at Congress.
Okay, one quick question. How would a city get land to build new housing? Do you have any ideas? Like, is there enough land out there to build the house that we need?
Absolutely. I think it's a myth that there isn't land in Vancouver to build housing. It's a huge myth. We're between the ocean and the mountains, but the city is the largest landowner already. So there's tons of properties that it can already use. And secondly, the city has vast expropriation powers for public objective purposes. So because affordable housing should be the #1 priority.
Wait a minute. What is expropriation? Tell me.
So,
what is?
So if you want to build a hospital or you want to build a turn lane, you compensate the owner for the property that you need to use.
So the city can actually take land away from private owners.
And the first step would be to negotiate with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first step would be to negotiate, and then, of course, if you're trying to build a hospital and someone is a holdout, then you can use their powers under the charter.
Okay, so I'm excited because we're looking for a tool to basically stop the housing crisis in Vancouver, and this sounds like a great tool. So how are you going to get the word out about this tool before the November election and make it part of the city's platform for the future?
Well, we're with COPE, the Coalition of Progressive Electors, and it's a member-driven party, and there are thousands of members. And this was voted into the party's platform, so we will be campaigning on it. And the idea is there will be a mayor candidate, and there will be councillors who are championing it. Also, we're doing forums around the city. We're having some in Kitts, Marpole, and other parts of the city where we explain housing authority, how that's going to work, how we're going to build housing, rent control, how that's going to work. We have a luxury housing tax that we're also going to implement to raise revenues. And so we want to explain how we're going to end the housing crisis.
Okay, and where can people go for more information about the COPE's Housing Authority?
You can go to the website, and I would suggest you could sign up as a member, and you can also be involved in the organization because it's a member-based organization. But everything's on the cope.bc.ca website.
Okay, Tristan Markle from the COPE Executive, talking about the Housing Authority. Thank you so much for being in the studio today.
Thanks, Wendy.
Well, I'm well on my way to becoming an informed voter. Are you? We need to keep discussing the issues as the municipal election will be up in November. Well, here at Access TV, we like to consistently promote our friends and community. In our next segment of Unsung Heroes, we have a bit of happy history. Robbe Hardnette shines a light on Mick Sahota. Here he is in conversation with Vicky Sahota and George Sahota, both siblings to the sports figure, innovator, and spokesperson who's no longer with us, Mick.
This is Access TV, and I'm your host, Robbe Hardnette, and we're featuring today's show, Unsung Heroes. And today I have some special guests, which is because their brother was my special friend, and that was Mick Sahota. I used to always say, Mick Sahota. And we had a joke with that, right? Yeah. You know? But in any case, we have Vicky Sahota and George Sahota. And thank you for being with me today. I really feel like this is a special day for us to talk about your brother and my good friend. And why don't we take it right from the beginning? You know, as being with him as the brother and sister, you got to see leadership at a very young age, I'm assuming, with Mick. Is that correct?
Oh, definitely so.
Yeah?
Definitely.
In what ways would you say that Mick started out as being a leader in the family and maybe in the community and in the high school and elementary school, et cetera, that you may remember?
You want to start, Vicky? Go ahead.
I think, well, first of all, with me, we were very close in age, being 11 months apart, and I can recall him always being like the big brother protector, and of course playing sports. That was the big thing, and as a little sister, I'd follow him around everywhere. And the interesting thing that I would like to say is with Mick, no matter what, family was important, and playing sports, I just pretty much followed him, did everything that he did. And he set the pace. He was the leader in the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood.
And as a young girl, like you were talking 7, 8, 9, playing sports, the boys didn't want me to play.
Now
but he stood up and said, well, they would say to him on the side, Mick, you know, you shouldn't bring your sister around.
I bet.
And George can attest to that.
Right.
And then he would say, well, no, you know, she's always, he would say, well, she's better than you. She has to play. But he never told me that. I never knew that till only recently. I never knew that till recently. So So now I realize that, he was always there.
Yeah. How about your experiences noticing your brother taking that leadership role?
Well, I think, you know, when my brother growing up, we grew up in 37th and Dumfries.
Okay.
And the elementary school there was called Tecumseh Annex. And that was our playground.
Nice.
And Kensington Park was next door, but Tecumseh Annex was our playground. Every day we'd go up and play, either if it wasn't soccer, football, baseball,
hockey.
Ball hockey. We did play ball hockey all day, you know, and then of course you'd always have all the kids would meet there. Mick would always have them organized, and we all knew Mick was always one of the captains.
Okay.
And being a big brother.
Yeah.
And I was the roly-poly kid in those days, so I was the kid that was uncoordinated.
I see.
So guess who was always last picked?
You were.
Guess whose team I always end up on?
Your brothers.
My brother's team.
All right. Well, let's bring it right up to from the childhood to him coming out as the young man and showing that leadership role. Because as I know, Mick was very involved with a lot of things in terms of first-time things in this community. Yeah. So let's talk about that. Let's go with the sports and how athletic he was. Well, starting with the gym and all of that.
Well, actually, just before the gym, when Mick was probably Mick was a natural. He was a natural athlete. It didn't matter. He was a scratch golfer. Never took a golf lesson in life, but he was a scratch golfer. Play tennis, pick up a racket, just play.
Wow.
You know, football. In the days in the BC Lions, in our neighborhood, they used to have a thing called the punt pass competition. It was called the Joe Cap pass punt competition, and they'd go to all the neighborhood parks and see who could pass, throw, and kick the farthest. Well, guess who in our neighborhood was the winner?
Mick.
Mick.
There we go.
Yeah.
And then they would go down to Empire Stadium in those days, and then they would have the regional championship. Well, we all knew who won.
Yes. So let's bring it up to speed to the gym, because that gym was very important in this community. Some of the most prominent individuals were there, and Mick was right in the midst of training and working and probably some part of putting that together too. Is that correct?
Very, very much so. And I didn't allude to that much. I should have alluded more to that on Mick's Celebration of Life, because a lot of the people that worked out in the gym came to pay the respects for Mick, and I didn't. But if you go back to the gym life, I was just telling the girls earlier, it was a different atmosphere, because you had the firemen, you had the Vancouver Police Department, you had guys who were in RCMP officers, you had CSIS, you had professional football players, you had professional hockey players, other athletes from all kinds of walks of life. Then you had the average normal guy like you and I, and then you had all the gangsters, all working out in the gym at the same time.
But
when you came to the gym, they came from Mick, they just came to work out and enjoyed the atmosphere.
About that is that Mick was like a bridge between communities, between cultures, between individuals. He was always open armed for anyone. When we were together, he would just know practically everybody, number one. And then two, there was no one lesser or greater.
No.
Exactly.
You know, everyone was the same with me, so that was fantastic. Now, let's talk more about the sports, because I know with Canucks, and actually he had told me a story about being part of a major event where he celebrated the women, and the men would show up, but it was focused on the women. Let's talk about that.
That was I could speak to that one, because he'd always enlist family members to help out. So, I mean, this was a big event at the Commodore Ballroom.
That's right.
And he did it for about 10 years, 1979 to maybe 1989, a good 10 years. And it would be 1,000 women would come there, and it would be like the so-called most eligible bachelor contest. And he would have all his, I mean, a lot of them, there were guys that he knew, where the guys from the Olympic gym were friends, and they were the most eligible bachelors, and they would parade in the Commodore Ballroom, and then there was this panel of judges, and then 1,000 screaming women, and then they would choose the most eligible bachelor at the end of the evening.
I love it. So again, that shows the innovation. He was
real
back
entrepreneur.
In the day. That was when?
79, but he, you know.
They're doing that now as a big deal. He was doing it in 79.
And of course, then you opened the doors and all the men came in.
Oh, yes.
So he would do that after. He says, okay, we're going to have, you know, you guys, it's going to be a big party here. We've got all these women.
I love it. I love it. So we have a few minutes, and I really want to detail his current, at just before he passed away.
Yes.
He was very active in bringing awareness to the Kidney Foundation.
Right.
So let's talk a bit about that. We have less than a minute, so let's condense it down, and because I know he had created a theme for himself, such as Mick. What was that again?
Believe in the journey.
Believe in the journey.
Yes.
And part of that was his really being at the forefront for the Kidney Foundation, right? Where would people, I think we're going to put a link up where people can find out how to connect into that, because he brought so much awareness, because kidney was not a formidable known disease out there.
Exactly.
And there were so many people that are being affected by it, especially a lot of different cultures that are being affected by it. And so he was very instrumental working along with the Kidney Foundation to bring awareness to that. That's correct?
And that was, well, about 5 years ago. Was it? Yeah, 5 years ago when he started the dialysis. And then we all became aware of it as a family too. Here is our brother. And so that's when he got totally involved. And he says, well, before you used to register, like the screen here is the organ donation. You used to do it with your driver's license. Right. But now you have to register online, or you have to register for it. So he brought up that awareness.
A lot of that change in awareness.
A lot of changes. And of course, the Kidney Foundation was huge.
Excellent.
And got involved in all the fundraising and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
That was a big cause for him.
Well, you know, there's so much that we could talk about with Mick.
I know.
I mean, it's just endless. So I just want to make sure that for those individuals that are dealing with kidney disease as well, they can connect into it to the Kidney Foundation. We'll have a couple links that you can go to and check out, as well as if you want to learn more about the life and times of Mick Sahota, we'll have a link for that as well. And I want to thank you guys for coming out. It's been really fun celebrating his life as well as his continuing, because, you know, you never end if you have lived a good life. It lives on.
Well, this is it.
Yeah.
His legacy lives on. Believe in the journey.
Believe in the journey.
Believe in the journey, yes.
All right. So, again, this is Robbe Hardnette of Unsung Hero with Access TV. Thank you.
Haisla Collins is an accomplished mixed media artist, blues singer, and new mama. Her breakthrough project, Through the Eye of the Raven, is a mural that can be viewed on Hastings just at Dunlevy here in Vancouver. Currently, she is curating a show on the 3rd floor of the Carnegie Centre, and she is highlighting the progressive evolution of Aboriginal art. Here she is with Wendy Pedersen.
Hello, I'm Wendy Pedersen with Access TV, shamelessly promoting our friends and community. I'm here in the studio today with Haisla Collins, and she's the coordinator of the Aboriginal Artisan programs at one of my very favorite places, the Carnegie Community Centre. She's also here with her daughter, Malaika, maybe our first baby on Access TV. So, Haisla, I've always wanted to know what's going on in the basement of the Carnegie Centre. Tell us, what are you doing? What kind of programs are you operating there?
Okay, well, the Aboriginal Artisan program runs on Tuesday, 2 to 5, Thursday, 1 to 4, and Friday we have workshops, and they're all different, from 5 to 8 p.m. to accommodate our working peoples as well. Wow. What do we do? We do a number of different things. I hire artists to come in and do leather work, or button blanket making, or photo transfer, or really anything that I can't do myself personally. And it's just an amazing thing to be coordinating such a program, because I'm learning so much all the time, and I'm helping my local Aboriginal artists accomplish their goals.
Right.
And it's just such a rewarding experience doing it.
And what are you teaching people exactly, or what are you providing for them when they come in there? Are they learning to do beadwork? Or
2 days a week we do drop-ins, the Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah.
And I have materials for doing drawing or painting or printmaking, either block printing or mono printing or silk screen.
Okay.
I've got stuff to do plaster Paris sculpture or beadwork, or really I keep my ears open and I provide for the community. So if people want to do something, I will do whatever in my power to make it happen.
Okay, great. And you have a show coming up. And could you tell us a little bit about the show, where it's going to be?
Okay, it's called Mixed Media Cultures. It's going to be on the 3rd floor of Carnegie Community Center in the atrium. It'll be running from June 20th to June 30th. And it's basically a show that's talking about the diversity and evolution of Aboriginal art and arts, because we're dealing with a whole bunch of different peoples who are kind of grouped together. So I sort of wanted to represent the different cultural I hesitate to use the word tradition. Because it basically puts Aboriginal people in sort of a stagnant, you know, it puts them in a non-evolving, non-progressive category. And I really believe that Aboriginal artists are doing new and innovative stuff and using their cultural backgrounds in order to influence their work. And so I sort of wanted to represent the diversity and the evolution that is happening in my Aboriginal communities.
That's great. So I'm curious to know, how did you find your way to the Carnegie Center? We all have our stories. Like, how did you get hooked in there?
Well,
to do this?
I was part of this really amazing project, Through the Eye of the Raven, which is a mural on Dunleavy and Hastings. It's the largest piece of public art in Western Canada. And one of my colleagues who worked on the project with me was offered a job doing silkscreen workshops. It was Sharifa Marsden, and she was offered a job to do silkscreen workshops for Oppenheimer Park in Carnegie, and she didn't really want to do it. I guess she didn't have the time for it, or it wasn't what she wanted to do at that particular time. I think she had a lot of work on her plate. Anyways, she referred me, and I gave workshops for the pilot program of the job that I have now. And when the job became available, I applied for it, and I got it. And I love it. It's just so amazing.
And over the years, I've met so many people who talk about you, but I never actually met you. But I knew you before I actually met you, because so many people in the community talk about the things that you're doing in the neighborhood. So. Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing in the Downtown East Side. Just remind us again of when these programs are happening and where exactly.
All right. First of all, the show is going to be starting on June 20th and going on until the 30th.
Of June 2014.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that it'll be hung on the 16th, but the opening is going to be on the 20th. My program, the Aboriginal Artisan program, is Tuesday, 2 to 5 p.m. Thursday, 1 to 4 p.m. These are both drop-ins. And I have workshops on Friday night at 5 to 8. And also, another program that's running at Carnegie that I'd like to advertise as well, the Cultural Sharing Program, is on Monday nights from 5 to 9 p.m. And it's been running for a very long time, and they're amazing.
Good. Thanks so much.
No
Malaika,
problem.
you did really well.
Good.
And thank you so much, Haisla Collins, for being here on Access TV.
Art, always evolving and reflecting our current culture, just like our young ones. Well, I've heard it said that you shouldn't count your eggs before they hatch. But now I'm learning that we shouldn't plant all of our seeds at once either. This way we can enjoy fresh greens throughout the summer. Let's hear from Judy Kenzie, who's going to share some planting tips and explain succession planting.
One of the things that you have to think about when planting is succession planting. So what that means is you plant every 2 weeks or so, depending on how fast the things grow, and then you're able to have a continuous harvest. So about 3 weeks ago, I planted some chard here, and you can see it's coming up nicely. This chard that's down in the middle is actually from last year's, and it's just about to go into seed. And I am going to plant in between them, just a little bit, some fresh seeds. And just so you know, chard is a really interesting looking seed. That's what chard looks like. Very similar to beets, actually. Very hard to tell apart. When you're planting seeds, a good rule of thumb is to plant them about 4 times as deep as the width of the seed. When planting something like carrots, I usually like to do sort of a ridge that goes down, because you want to plant them fairly shallow. And I tend to not like to plant them too thickly, because I don't like to thin plants as much. And then you just cover that up. And water. So what we're going to do here is we're going to plant some dry beans. These are Tiger Eye, and Ethan has a cocoa bean. Ethan's got a black cocoa bean, and these are Tiger Eye beans. They're pretty cool. They're not terribly common. These ones actually come from the UBC farm, and we're going to put these in the truck farm this year, and they're used as a dry bean, so you can actually dry them out and cook them later on. We're going to plant them down fairly deep, about 1 inch deep, and then they're going to run along the bamboo here.
Is that about 1 inch?
Yep. Perfect.
There's a bee in my bonnet, hello, hello, a bee in my bonnet, hello.
I'm Gunargie O'Sullivan with special guest Tammy Lynne Elder, the producer and director of Project Eagle Feather. They're still taking the children. How are you today, Tammy Lynne?
Oh, I'm doing good. A little warm. But
a little warm. It's good. Beautiful though. We're leading up to like Aboriginal Day soon.
Yes, very exciting.
And you've completed the first part of your film. Yes. They're still taking the children.
Yes.
How does it feel?
It feels good. Yeah. It's overwhelming that it's finished, because it's taken so long.
Yeah.
10 years is a long time.
10 years.
Through 5 years of a major accident.
Well, you've been working on it like way before the residential school agreement came out. You were ahead of your time. And tell us more about the film.
The film is a First Nations documentation of unheard stories aimed at continuing the legacy of First Nations storytelling. Basically, it retells the stories of the residential schools, the intergenerational effects, while constructing a narrative about healing and the power of unity. The film was inspired by my own healing journey as an Indigenous child raised in Canadian foster care. I wanted to know who I was, where I came from, what brought me here. I wanted to know, why was I taken into foster care, and why was I sexually exploited at the age of 11? And through research and personal studies, I discovered that this was the norm, that this is a cultural genocide, Holocaust.
And it continues to this day.
It continues to this day.
You were also, as an adult, lost your own child to the ministry. So now that makes it how many? 2 generations, as far as you know, that have been apprehended?
Absolutely. And even though my son was gone for 2 weeks, the psychological damage from that, it's just irreversible. They let a molester have access to him. And after I begged them and pleaded, screamed, cried, there was nothing I could do.
And how is he now?
He's struggling. He's in his adults, he's struggling, but he's, he went to welding, he's doing some good things. trying to make a life for himself, but it's been a bit of a struggle.
And so now you're in the distribution phase of your film.
Yes.
They're still taking the children.
They're still taking the children.
Are you looking for like funds or like
Yes,
a
I'm looking for marketing material funds. I'm looking for distributors in territories of different parts of the world. Not just a distributor that comes and say, hey, I'm going to take your film and distribute it. I want somebody to work with me, somebody from different territories, different countries, to cover those areas, and have it be a collaborative project right down to the distribution.
And so how can people contribute to your fund?
They can go to Project Eagle Feather News. I have a little news page, and there's a place that you can give and find out a little more about the project, keep up to date with the project. We have protests coming up against the ministry.
So it's a group called Project Eagle Feather Group?
It's Project Eagle Feather News Facebook page, and then there's Aboriginal Child and Family Services Protest Group, and anybody's free to join. I also give advocacy to help parents get their children back.
And is that where people find you if they're looking for an advocate as well?
Mostly,
All right.
yes.
What's your email?
My email is Tammy Lynne, TammyLynne 533 and you can also donate through PayPal.
Okay. And speaking of protests, there's going to be an up-and-coming protest.
There's an up-and-coming protest. I'm supporting the Love of the Children Facebook International event with a protest here in Vancouver at the steps, at the Vancouver Art Gallery steps at 9 p.m. I'm going to light candles for all the children that have lost their lives in care over the past, in 2010, I think it was 1,050 in total across Canada, and that's a lot of candles.
That is a lot of candles. Very sad, but it's a beautiful thing that you're doing. And tell us when the protest is again, one more time.
It's on July 13th, 9 p.m. because we want to have, when the lights go out, we can see all the candles. And I've done this before, and you can see candles burn out as we're lighting them, which is kind of synonymous with what's going on.
Great.
Like by the time I finished lighting the candles, I think between 1 to 3 children would have died.
Oh, bad and sorry statistics. But it's great that you're going international with this and recognizing that there are a lot of children who have been lost in foster care and continue to be lost in foster care. And that's a sad and sorry situation.
Yeah, the 60 Scoop never stopped. It was the residential schools, the 60 Scoop, adoption, foster care system, and all of those things are covered in my film when we talk intergenerationally.
Okay, you can find the film on YouTube, Project Eagle Feather.
Yes.
And Tammy Lynne Elder has been my guest today. Very pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
What nation are you from?
Nipissing First Nations.
Beautiful. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Haisla. And if you're looking for something to do on June 21st to celebrate Aboriginal Day, please check out the Red Jam Slam and Co-op Radio fundraiser at the Heartwood Cafe, 317 Broadway, where you can see people like Ryan Gonzalez, Aisha O'Sullivan, the Wildy Salmon, and Jidji Carl Boys, a new person in town, plus Warren Hooley from the Okanagan, Gary Godfredson, Rose Sycamore, and the Soul Carvers, all in one day at the Heartwood Cafe, 317 Broadway. We'll see you there.
Well, Imtiaz Popat is here next with Sirish Rao, who is the founder and director of this year's Indian Summer Festival, coming up this July. And we also have Neelamjit Dhillon, who is a composer and one of the featured performers here with us in the studio. Let's hear some highlights of the event.
So first of all, Sirish, we're going to have another Indian Summer and 2014. And tell us what's the highlight of this year's festival?
Well, I think really the core of this year's festival is the meeting, since Indian Summer really is about dialogue. Dialogue between South Asia and Canada, dialogue between different artists, different genres. This year there's a lot of dialogue between music and poetry, between memory and politics. And one of the events will be with Neil right here, who's so the Neelamjit Dhillon Jazz Quartet will be playing with poets Pinder Dulai, Priscilla Opal, and Rene Saklikar. And they'll be mixing word and sound and image to take a look at where have we come 100 years from Komagata Maru, what have we done with that artistically and as a society. And then we'll have the wonderful Coleman Barks, the foremost interpreter of Rumi, the 13th century Persian poet who still rings true today. And he'll be playing with a series of musicians. So there are a lot of these interactions that are music, word, visual, and yeah.
So you have performances, you have literary cabaret, you have panel discussions, a lot of it here at Simon Fraser Woodward's. You also have film in the park at Victory Square Park, free for everybody. What's the feature this year?
So, I mean, this is a great thing about Victory Square Park. It's a park, it's a little jewel downtown, really, and we welcome everyone to come in and watch Bend It Like Beckham, which is, you know, one of my favorite movies, and also enjoy being together. There's a laughing yoga class before, there'll be food trucks, and Chris Duggan will teach hip-hop yoga. So it's an atmosphere of celebration. The root word of festival is feast, and we really try to make it a feast for the senses, for the taste buds, for the intellect, and be very welcoming about it,
So, Neelamjit, you're actually premiering your series at the Jazz Festival this year, 21st of June at Granville Island. So tell us about this series of music you've composed to commemorate the arrival of the Komagata Maru.
So I've composed a suite of 9 pieces to focus on the story of the Komagata Maru and that incident that occurred 100 years ago. Like we were saying, right here in Cole Harbour, 100 years ago, there was a ship with over 300, close to 376 passengers who were held on board that ship and not allowed to immigrate to Canada. So as myself, as a member of the South Asian community, being born and brought up in Canada, how has that impacted the South Asian community here? How is the memory of that event still relevant today? So by using not only my jazz training as a saxophonist, as an improviser, but also using my classical Indian background as a tabla player and playing the bansuri, and also improvisation is a big part of Indian classical music. But how do I bring those worlds together? So rag meeting tal, meeting jazz and the saxophone.
So you're playing at the Jazz Festival, you're also playing for Indian Summer. So where are you going to be playing for the Jazz Festival and the Indian Summer as well?
So for the Jazz Festival, we'll be performing at Performance Works on Granville Island on June 21st. That's at 1:30 in the afternoon. It is a free concert. And then for the Indian Summer Festival at the Museum of Vancouver on July 6th. And I believe that's at 6:30 in the evening. And both events are amazing. So at the Jazz Festival, I'll be premiering the suite in its entirety, all 9 pieces, along with visuals to contextualize what's going on, both archival photographs and contemporary artwork by South Asian artists. And at the Indian Summer Festival, we get to collaborate and intersperse the music along with poetry. And how is that dialogue playing out today? So how do we remember what has happened and how do we forge forward?
So this is the conversation with music and poetry, panel discussion and so on. This is what's going to happen this year with the Indian Summer Festival. That's great.
Absolutely.
So maybe you can play a piece from your suite and tell us what this is, and then we can maybe go out with that.
Sure. I'll play a composition on the bansuri, which I've arranged. It's a traditional composition in Agbairav, and it's called In the Harbor. So this is about the experience of the passengers as they're waiting in the harbor, as their food is being depleted, as they're coming to the realization that this country does not want them. They will not be allowed to immigrate and will have to go back to India. So.
Okay, so before we do that, I want to thank both of you coming on.
Thanks for having us.
And for coming on to Access Community Television, shamelessly promoting our friends and community. So
it's our pleasure.
Yeah, please.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Imtiaz. The Indian Summer Festival runs from July 3rd through to the 12th in venues around the SFU Woodward Center, including a film screening in Victory Square. Well, thank you for watching Access TV for June 2014. We'll be back with more stories for you. You might have one you'd like to tell. If you do, please contact us. We're listening. Until then, I'm Molly Caron, shamelessly promoting our friends and community.
There's a bee in my bonnet, hello, hello, a bee in my bonnet, hello.
One of the great ideas that you can do with kids is you can do a self-watering container using plastic containers that you know, from old juice, pop, whatever. Now, I'm going to use some organic baby blanket here, but you can use any kind of cotton cloth, old diapers, whatever you have. Just cut a small amount, stick it through so that you end up with it sticking out a little bit like this. Then you put it in. Add some soil. You're going to put the water in the bottom, and you now have a self-watering container. All right.